class, Prof. JC here, and I want to talk about something that I think is really important to this idea of purpose and kind of where you're going in life. You've probably heard the statement before that there's actually two statements, but you've probably heard one of these statements. One is a statement that I grew up hearing. You are the sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. You are the sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So if you think about the 5 people that you hang around with the most and you look at your life, you're probably going to be somewhere among that group, right? And obviously the point of saying that is be careful who you choose to surround yourself with. So that's one. The other one is show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And I absolutely, I believe both of these. Again, I don't have any empirical data around either one of these, but just in my own experience, I've seen this. I have experiential data. I've seen this in my own life. And at the age of 45, as I spend more time reflecting so that I can go to the next level in my own life, right? That's just how I do it. I spend time reflecting, and what are the choices I made in my 20s and 30s that I don't want to repeat in my 40s. And so I reflect on that. And in recent weeks, I've been reflecting on some of the choices I made in my teens and 20s in terms of who I surrounded myself with. And it's amazing. I had certain groups of people that I wanted to be with, and I actually chose these other people over here because they were more low-hanging fruit. They were more fun to hang around with. But I made all of my worst decisions in life in my 20s. I'm not going to have a midlife crisis because I had a midlife crisis back in my 20s. And I'm not blaming my friends for the choices I made, but there's something to be said for when you're hanging around people who act in a certain way, you're probably going to do the same thing as they do. It also goes to say that, or I've heard another person say that when you look at a person's life and if they're on an upward trajectory, that means they're up and going to the right? So their life is going well for them. And, maybe their jobs are getting better, their neighborhoods are getting better, opportunities are getting better for them. And all of a sudden you see them take a downhill slide, or maybe you hear about it later, they crash and they burn. You're thinking, how did that happen? This is a person who's on an upward trajectory in life. Anytime you see that happen, you can always pinpoint it back to there's a slide that happened, right, that got him down to the crash. And you can always pinpoint that moment on the slide. You can always pinpoint to a person, a choice in a relationship that they made. The same goes if you see someone who maybe they're living a mediocre life and it's plateaued, or maybe it's even on a downhill slide, and all of a sudden you see them start skyrocketing up, thinking, how did that happen? This person was the one we counted out. We never thought they were going to succeed, and all of a sudden they start succeeding and just taking off. You can also take the moment that they start moving up, right? You can always take that back to a relationship choice as well. Maybe it's someone they start dating, maybe it's a friendship, maybe it's a therapist, maybe it's a boss, maybe it's a new job, and so they're around a new group of people. Whatever it is, there's a relationship that either makes people go up or down. So I say all that to say choosing the relationships around us are important. Here's what I say, and the reason why we're talking about this in a purpose class. You all just got done doing life maps, and as I said, I sent an announcement out to each and every one of you. I was so proud of the work that you did. Some of you were just really intense on the work you did. And I could tell you weren't doing it for me. You weren't doing it for a grade. You were doing it for yourself. And on a couple of them, I didn't even read the full thing because I felt like I was kind of getting into your personal business and in your personal space. You were so detailed in terms of where you're going to take your life. And I was just so proud of you for that. One of the things that will hold us back from truly living a life of purpose, it has to do with the relationships that we seek and the models that we have, okay? And so I'm not going to talk too much about the relationships. Maybe we'll talk about that here in a couple of weeks. But the models I think are so important. And this is what I think a lot of people miss, right? They have a life that they want to pursue, and maybe they try to reinvent the wheel in going after those dreams. And we don't have to do that. Tony Robbins, who's a motivational speaker, some of you are younger in the class, maybe you haven't heard of him. If you're in my age range, which Most of you are not. But if you're my age range, or maybe in your 30s, you've heard of Tony Robbins, and he's got a great saying out there, and it says, "Success leaves clues." Success leaves clues, and I never got that. I heard him say it several years ago, but I never got it until maybe in the last 5, 6 years, and I started realizing all the answers that we want are out there. Right? If you have a dream of becoming a great um, CEO one day, there are books out there of great CEOs that have written paths that they take. Now, are you going to take their exact path? No, but you can model yourself after that person, right? And that's what Tony, Robbins talks about. Maybe you want to be a great manager one day. There are tons of books out there that will help you, do that and go in that direction. There are a ton of people out there in interviews, especially today. I grew up in a day and age where we didn't have YouTube and we didn't have, podcasts that we could listen to. You had to go to the library to get all of it. Uh, but today you've got all the stuff out there. If you want to be a great mom, you want to be a great dad, you want to be a great partner or spouse, there are books out there for that. Maybe some of you say, I don't have dreams of owning my own company or being a CEO or being a Fortune 500. I just want to be a great dad. I just want to be a great mom. There are books out there. There are models out there we can find, even if we don't have the right ones. But here's what I found. I think I've talked about this in this class. In one of the diversity classes that I taught last fall, we talked about this idea of privilege, and so I wanted to go around the room and kind of see, because that class I was in, they were fighting this idea of privilege. They didn't like it because a lot of these people in the class had actually pulled themselves up by the bootstraps, so they didn't want to have to admit that maybe something helped them along the way. So I had a night where we went around the room, and I simply asked them, uh, talk about your greatest mentor in life, the person who meant the most to you, and what did they do? How did they help you? What was amazing in that room, and I think that night we had 13 people, probably 11 out of the 13 people, 11 or 12 out of the 13 people, all of them were doing what they were doing in life today, or they'd become who they'd become, uh, based on the mentor that they had. It was amazing to me. I mean, and I think that's the night when the privilege actually kicked in for most people in that room, was they started realizing, okay, wait a minute, just having a good role model is an aspect of privilege. Okay, so we're not here to talk about privilege and stuff. That's not the purpose of this class. But that got me thinking even more about, we have to be careful in terms of picking our role models, the people that we want to look after, because those are the people that we're going to pursue. So let's say, like someone in that room that night, they said it was their aunt. And their aunt was actually, I think their aunt had worked in HR. And now this person was an HR manager. I mean, it was uncanny how much their aunt, what kind of person their aunt was and what kind of person they were. I mean, it's almost like they followed right in their steps. And she had said for years, this was the person I looked up to. You had, other people who's, men in the room whose dads were in the military for 20 something years, and they did the same thing, right? And so at the stage where we all are in this class, we get to pick and choose our mentors. When we're young, it's our parents, right? And if you had great parents, that's a wonderful thing. But if you didn't have great parents, that's not a great thing, because your first 10 years of life, when you're not smart enough to think about choosing other role models, you're kind of stuck with your parents. And so if your parents aren't great, your foundation is set based on watching them. And so that, some of us have to spend years and years trying to get that out of our head and find new models, right? And if I'm honest with you, that's been my story. And the cool thing about, today though, is when you get in your 20s, when you get in your 30s, when you get in your 40s, you get to choose your role model. So here's what we're going to do. And this is going to be a 2-week assignment. So this is not due this week. Okay. I'll make sure to spell that out in the assignment as well. But you're going to watch this video and you don't have to do anything with it this week. You can start on it. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about the greatest mentor, role model in your life. Model, right? So going back to what we said at the beginning, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. You are the sum of the 5 people you surround yourself with. I would say this: show me your model, your role model, and I will show you your future. Right? Just one more story. Just allow me one more story on this, and then we'll move to the assignment. Uh, Several years ago, I used to go around with a friend of mine and we'd go to local juvenile halls here in San Diego County. And it was actually, he was associated with the LA Chargers. It was when the Chargers were here, or they were in the process of moving up to LA. And so somehow I got on this team where I'd get on, I'd go out there with current Chargers, former Chargers, and we would go to these local juvenile halls and we would just speak to these kids. And it was an amazing 2 years. It was almost every Friday that we would do that. At the time, my schedule allowed me to do that. And it was just an amazing experience. And in one of them, I mean, this was a place where these kids, man, I get emotional just think about it. Now, this was a place where these kids did not have good models. And it reached to me because I'm Afro Latino, and I would go into these juvenile halls, and 90% of the kids, 90 to 95% of the kids were black or brown. And I thought about my own life, and I thought about choices I've made, and I thought about things that could have been different in my own life, and I could have been right there, where they were. One of the kids talked about one day I was able to have a conversation with just him. He was actually Afro Latino, which is why we connected. He was from Colombia, and I'm from Ecuador. And so we just sat and we talked for a few minutes, and I said, tell me what got you here. And I started asking him more questions. And basically, it was his aunt and uncle. He landed with his aunt and uncle. They were into drug running and all kinds of stuff, violence, and somehow he pulled a knife on somebody. I mean, and I think there was more to the story that he didn't necessarily want to tell me, which was fine. But that's what got him in there. Basically, what I'm trying to say, positive or negative, what got him there was he looked up to this role model, which was this uncle of his, and that was his model. And so he followed him and he did the things he was asked to do. And where did that land him? It landed him in jail. Most of us aren't going to have that. We get to choose today, right? But the model idea is so important. So I say all that to say it's very important that we choose who we model our lives after, right? Now, this is a faith-based university. Many of you would say, hey, it's Jesus Christ. I've had people say that in class, that I model my life after Jesus Christ. That's great. And that can be a model. Okay. Here's what we're going to do for this assignment. You are going to find your model. And I really want you to think about this, because some of you, maybe subconsciously, you're following a model that you don't know that you are. Maybe you don't want to be following that model anymore. And guess what? You don't have to. It might take some time to kind of get that model out of your head. That's what I've had to do in my own life. But over time, you can find models. And here's the thing: our models don't even have to be people who are living, right? They don't have to be people who are, who are in our network, right? I've got 6 people that I look up to, and all 6 of them, and these are people that I study their lives, and anything that they write, anything that they speak about, any documentary I find on these people, I've tried to take in everything, any book that they have out there. I make sure I buy it and read it. But I don't know any of these people. None of them are in my network. 6 degrees of separation. Maybe I could figure out how to bring one of them into my network, but none of them currently are. I worked for one of them years ago, but he's not in my network. I have no pull with him. But I study their lives as much as I can. So you don't, I guess what I'm saying is the model that you have, it could be someone that you know. And some of you, if you're lucky, it's your mom and your dad. It's great, when I get to interview students who are coming into this program, who are coming into our business program or leadership programs. Sometimes when somebody really stands out, I'll ask them, who's your model, right? Who's your role model growing up in life? And every single time, I think to a couple of interviews that I had just in recent weeks, and one was a gentleman, and I knew it as soon as he started talking. I knew that this guy had a great dad. And as soon as I asked him, who's your role model? He's going to be coming into our program in the fall. I'm very excited. He's actually coming from Kentucky. He's coming to play sports, and he'll be a part of our program. And he talked about his dad. And I started getting emotional just listening to him talk about his dad. And then there was one other just recently here in the last 2 weeks. And as she started talking, I could sense she had a great mother. And I asked her exactly who it was. She had a great mother. And so if you're lucky, you would say it's one of your parents, and that's the greatest gift. Okay. But not all of us have that, you know, or our interests are different than our parents. So we chose someone else. I want you to think about this model, who it is. And then here's what you're going to do. You're going to reach out to this model and you're going to ask them just a set of questions, 5, 6 questions. And you get to come up with the questions. I'm not going to determine what these questions are for you, but I want you to spend 20 to 30 minutes with this model, role model. Now, I say model, okay? Now, don't get me in trouble here, especially if you're a married man on the call and you go call some model out there. I didn't say model, I said role model, okay? Um, so whoever your role model is, just spend 20 to 30 minutes with them, more if you can, right? And just ask them questions. If it's someone who has lived a life of purpose, just ask them, and I want you to come up with the questions. So what we're going to do this week, okay? So the actual assignment is due next week, okay? Where you're going to turn it is. This week, I want you to come up with the 5 questions that you're going to ask your role model. This sounds cheesy, I know it. You're thinking, well, I'm not in 8th grade. Why am I doing this? I promise you, in your 20s, 30s, and even when you get to my age, when you're 40s, or maybe if we have, some people in the classroom in their 50s, if we're not careful, we let those subconscious role models we have, ones from years ago, and we wonder, why am I a little bit stuck here? Why am I a little bit stuck here? It's because we don't know, but we're following a model that we shouldn't be following. So write the questions. 5 or more, okay? 5 is the minimum that you should come up with. And then next week, what you're going to do, we're not going to have a podcast, but next week, what you're going to do is you're going to, sometime between now and then, you're going to reach out to your role model. Now, if you say my role model is not living, my role model is some, I don't know, Elon Musk or something like that. I'm just throwing something out there, you know, well, then here's what you do. You listen to some interviews that they have. You read a book about them. You read some articles on them, right? And you can come up with principles for your life based on what you hear them say. This is what I'm saying. Success leaves clues. So if you have a role model out there that's a business person that you don't know, or maybe it's a leader in the community that you don't know, probably there's something out there where you can read something about what they've said or something they've done, or an interview. And so you can formulate questions, and then it's almost like you're going to have a fake interview with them. If you're really high speed, right, you might reach out to that person and actually set up an interview, but I'm not asking you to do that. Okay. I just want you to think about what this mentor is. And then I want you to come up with the five or more questions this week. And the next week we'll actually do it where you sit down with them, or you read a book or whatever it is. And you answer those questions that you come up with this week. I know this sounds cheesy, guys, but I'm telling you, your models are key to where you're going to go. And if you're going to live a life on purpose, I want to make sure you've got the right model that you're following, okay? So that you can remain living a life of purpose. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode, which will be 2 weeks from now, because next week we won't do a podcast. We'll just do the assignment. But I look forward to your questions, and I really look forward to the responses that you get from your role models out there. I'll see you soon. Take care.